Hi, welcome back to the Blessed Bonds podcast. Today I have Myron Golden on, and we're going to just be sharing different stories and all that kind of stuff. You wanna
Sure.
just tell us a little bit about you.
My name is Myron Golden. I'm an author, business consultant, teach people how to grow their businesses. I do that based on Bible principles. So that's pretty much who I am, what I do.
Yeah. That's awesome. When I was listening to what you were talking about earlier, and you were talking about how your values, like you stayed the same. Like some people I've seen in the world, they become something. Like we're all something, but they become something to the world, and then they just change. And that's a fear of mine. Is I'm like, okay, what if I become something big and then I change? And so, how did you stay true to your values and true to what God has put in you?
Well, I think because I started by knowing that my identity comes from God, who is the ultimate identity. And so it doesn't matter what people think I am. It only matters what God and myself know I am.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to not be true to who somebody thinks I am, I'd rather not be true to who people think I am than not be true to who God knows I should be. So.
That's good. Yeah, because I think definitely people change, and they change for the world.
Well, and sometimes I wonder if they changed or if they just revealed who they always were, but they hid it because they were afraid they couldn't afford to let people know. And not, I have money, so I don't need you, so I'll just be who I've always been.
That's true.
I don't know, maybe.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Sometimes we think people changed, and they really didn't change. They just finally showed their true colors, like who they really are.
I think that's hard. So you had talked about earlier how you had someone that you relied on when you lost everything.
Yeah.
How did you know that they were going to be true to you? Because there's a lot of people in the world that you could trust. And you don't know that they're going to be true.
Yeah, I knew this guy's going to be true to me. So his name's David, and he's a pastor in Corsicana, Texas. And he was a youth pastor before he was a pastor and a Sunday school teacher. He and his wife had a youth Sunday school class. And they had this girl in their Sunday school class. And he went to a pastor's conference at a big church in Indiana when he was 26, 25. And he heard me speak there when I was like 19. And he said, he went back to his church and said to this teenage girl who was in high school at the time, I met a guy who preached at this pastor's conference. I want you to go to college there. I want you to meet him, and I want you to marry him. She was like, whatever. So anyway, he and his wife paid for the girl who later became my wife to go to college. And that's where we met. And I met him when I went back to Texas to visit her family and meet her family that December. And I stayed at his house, and we've been friends ever since. So then he went through some business challenges back in the early 2000s, and I taught him my framework for selling from the stage and how to create premium value offers. And he built like a business that was doing $12 million a year. And so when I was down, he's like, Myron helped us when we were down. We're not going to let him drown while he's down. So it was that kind of thing.
That's really cool. I think that definitely shows the fruits of the Spirit. And then Galatians, it talks about bearing one another's burdens. And it's 100%. Not like, I'm going to take care of you when you're doing good.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to take care of you because I love you, not your money.
Exactly.
And it's an important value
to have
in life.
It is. Yeah.
I think you have that when you're born. You also have to grow that.
100%.
So how did you continue to grow that and continue to have that heart during all these things?
The heart to do what?
To take care of other people.
I think it's something my parents instilled in us. I've got 6 brothers. And I think it's something that my parents instilled in us, that just because we're here, we get here by ourselves, we're not here for ourselves. And so I've always been trained and taught by my parents. And then I came to Christ when I was 16. I started reading the Bible. You look out for other people. The scripture says, look not every man on his own thing, but every man also on the things of others. So it's you are my responsibility, right? And I'm your responsibility, but it's not my responsibility to let you know I'm your responsibility. It's just my responsibility to take care of you when it's my turn.
Yeah.
So just cool. Being aware of that.
Yeah. This one's kind of an interesting question, but how do you know which people to help and which people?
Yeah, and when do you help people? When does help and when does help hurt? Man, that's such a great question. I think You help the people you can when you can, as long as you realize that that help is not hurting them. But sometimes you realize that the help that you're giving people is actually doing more harm than good. Because sometimes when you help people, it causes them to avoid continuing to mess up their lives. You know what I'm saying? One of the things, when you have money and people know you have money and people who are close to you know you have money, you become their first solution to their money problems. And so, um, and I love helping people, but a friend of mine who's a pastor also, he said to me, he said, Myron, don't let people come to you and say, hey, I need your help. I need you to loan me $2,000. They can say that, but you say, well, I'll tell you what, I'm willing to help you, but I'm not willing to loan you $2,000. And then loan them the amount of money that if they didn't give it back to you, you'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
Say, I'm not going to be your solution, but I'll be a part of your solution. I'll loan you $300.
Yeah.
Then you got to go figure out how to get the rest. Because I think most people don't realize that money is very rarely their money problem. Their money problem is usually the result of something else further upstream that they've not dealt with. And it just shows up in money eventually.
Yeah, like they're lacking something else, so they find fulfillment, which they think will be
Right.
money, but it doesn't actually happen.
Right. And well, some people it's gambling. Some people it's drinking. Some people it's drugs. Some people it's laziness. Some people it's gluttony. Like the scripture says, the drunkard and the glutton shall lie down together, and drowsiness will clothe a man with rags. I'm not saying that all broke people are lazy, gluttonous, or drunken, but I'm saying that if you're lazy, gluttonous, or drunken long enough, you will be broke. And sometimes, and giving you money doesn't fix any of those.
Right.
So,
I feel like money's not the solution, but money can be a tool.
Right.
It's always
Right.
how you use things.
Mhm.
In opinion.
Yes, it's how you use things is determined by what you believe the purpose of those things are. So
That's good. Okay, so I kind of want to go back to when you came to Christ at 16. What
sure.
was that like? How did you
So that
reach
was
that point?
what was that like? So my parents had taken us to Sunday school and church most of our lives, and so I had a healthy fear of God. Like I was aware that God is God and I am not God,
Yeah.
and God is not to be trifled and He's not to be toyed with. I was not a good person. I wasn't kind. I was kind of had a chip on my shoulder, an attitude. Would fight at the drop of the hat. Sometimes I'd drop two hats, and I was angry. I guess would be a good way to describe it. But I was into martial arts, and I met a friend. I met this other kid who was into martial arts, and I could tell because he wore a Bruce Lee shirt, like a Bruce Lee jacket to school. I'm like, oh, okay, he knows he's into martial arts. So I went to his house one day. We were practicing martial arts in his basement. This other guy comes over. His name was Stan, and so we were at Pete's house, and Stan comes over to Pete's house, and we're all sparring in Pete's basement. And then right before Stan leaves, he says, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, no, ask me a question. He said, so if you died today, do you know for sure you'd go to heaven? I'm like, where did that come from? I was like, what? I said, no, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't go to heaven. He says, can I show you some verses how you can be sure? Sure, you can show me anything you want because my parents taught you respect church people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he showed me all these verses. He said, so do you want to receive Christ? I can't. I'm not a good person. I've got a bad attitude. I've got a bad temper. I'm not going to play with God and pretend I'm going to be some church dude. No, I'm not doing that. And so he witnessed to me. I started hanging out with him, started going to youth activities with him. And every time he saw me, he would witness to me. I was like, I can't, bro. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize there is no ready, right? I didn't realize that the only thing I had to do to receive Christ was to let Christ do it. I didn't have to do anything to get ready. And there was nothing I could do to get ready. I didn't realize that. Then finally, one Sunday night at church, the preacher preached. I was there. This older guy taps me on the shoulder, says, son, do you want to receive Jesus? Yes, sir. And I received Christ, went home, told my mom. She said, that's nice, baby. I told my brother Mike, who's a year younger than me. He thought to himself, he told me this later, I'll give you 2 weeks, you'll be back to your fighting, cussing self. Okay. Well, it's been longer than 2 weeks. I had never went back to my fighting, cussing self, and he's a pastor in Pennsylvania now.
It's
So
crazy.
yeah, so that was, and I started reading the Bible within a couple of weeks. Stan said you need to start reading the Bible. Then we started memorizing scripture. I was on a quiz team. We'd memorize a chapter a week, and then I read this book called Next Steps for Growing Christians, and it was like a Chick track, but it was made by the same company. I don't know if you're familiar with Chick tracks.
Mhm.
It's like cartoon. It's like a cartoon devotional.
That's fun.
Best way I can describe it. It's called Next Steps for Growing Christians, and it talked about, okay, you need to pray for an hour a day, read 10 chapters of the Bible a day, and then witness to somebody at every opportunity. So that's what we did.
That's cool.
We were like a bunch of teenagers who were just on fire for just evangelizing the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so that's pretty much how it got started.
It's crazy how you went from where you were and just because one person witnessed to you.
Yep.
I think that's what we need to be.
100%.
Because like, you never know what you are to somebody else
100%.
and how they see you. Someone told me one time, they're like, you might be the only bit of God that somebody sees in their life. So be careful how you walk around. Be careful what you listen to.
Make sure you don't misrepresent him.
Right. It's like, okay, so you say something and they think, oh, that's what a Christian says. Oh, that's what a believer in God says. And that changed everything. I was like, I'm not going to be able to talk like the rest of the teenagers my age. I'm not going to be able to watch the things the rest of my teenagers my age do. I do watch because I'm not representing God when I do those things.
100%.
And so I think that's really amazing that you changed because you saw this is not going to lead me to heaven.
Well,
and you saw what you needed to do.
When I received Christ, see, my whole life, I thought you had to be good enough to go to heaven. I thought you had to do something. But when Stan witnessed to me, he showed me it's not something that I do. It's something that Christ did for me.
Yeah.
And all I have to do is receive that. And the life that I live, like the good deeds that I do, are not so I can get to heaven, not so I can become a child of God, but because I already am one.
Mm-hmm.
So I live a life of righteousness and gratitude. I live a life of righteousness out of gratitude, not out of obligation.
Yeah.
So that changed everything for me. Of like, if Christ can give his life for me, then I can live my life for him.
Mm-hmm. Right, and saying, okay, you did that for me, and I didn't deserve that.
I didn't deserve that, right?
Like, I feel like something I heard the other day is they were like, if life was fair, then I would be on the cross. That's true. All these things that I've done, I deserve to be on the cross.
Right.
I don't deserve to be here living, knowing that I get to go see you after.
Right.
And I heard you talking earlier, I was overhearing what you were saying about having a relationship with God. Like, I'm not a Christian because I go to church and I show up at church and I smile and I read my Bible and I highlight and I look all pretty up there. Like, I have a relationship with God.
Right.
And so
that relationship with God is based on the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ.
Yeah.
If it's based on anything else, it's not a relationship, it's rules.
Mm-hmm. Like, religion and relationship are two totally different things.
Two totally different things.
So yeah, like that was cool. I heard you say that and I was like, that is true, because if you don't have a relationship with God, because a relationship is so important. That's how you have a bond, so you have a connection.
Exactly.
If you don't have that with God, then
exactly.
What do you have?
And that relationship with God begins with me trusting what he did instead of wanting him to trust what I did.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so I wanted to go into when you lost everything. So can you kind of tell us like that story? Because I don't really know the story or.
Yeah. So business was booming. It was going really, really well. We were doing, $100K a month back in 2005, 2006, 2007. But like we went starting on April 15th, 2007, started 7 years of tragedy for us. So my oldest son, Adam, was in a car accident on his way home from church. And he was in the hospital, and I was speaking at a Bible conference in Florida. This is in Pennsylvania. So he was in the hospital, and so I ended the conference. I didn't end the conference. I just left the conference. I went home, and I didn't know if he was going to be dead or alive when I got there. But he was unconscious. He was alive, but he was unconscious. 4 days later, he passed away. It was the most surreal, painful, mind-blowing experience of my life. There are no words.
Yeah.
Right. There are no words. And as painful as it was, and as hard as it was for me to watch my son die, what was even harder was watching my wife watch her son die and watching my other two children watch their brother die. And there was nothing I could do to rescue any of them from this situation.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't protect them from this. It was not like I would have done anything, and I could do nothing. I would have done anything to save my son's life. I could do nothing. I was so aware of how control is an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
but I was more aware of how much God loved me.
Yeah.
And I was aware of how much God loved me because I would have done anything if I could have done something. I could do nothing. God watched his son die for me. He could have done something, and he did nothing. And that was the clearest I had ever perceived the love of God in my life. I can't imagine why a holy, righteous, just God would watch his holy, righteous, just son die on the cross for our sins when we deserved it, and he didn't. So that changed my life in so many ways. So that was the beginning of 7 years of stuff like that. Not none of it to that degree, but that was pretty traumatic. Well, the next year they created the Great Recession. What year were you born?
2010.
So, so you were like, it was so crazy. Every business is booming, everything's booming. Then all of a sudden, it was kind of like a financial COVID.
Okay.
Everything, like, places didn't shut down, but like businesses shut down in droves.
Yeah.
People lost houses and cars and fortunes, and I was an entrepreneur, and I had clients who owed me over $250,000 and just disappeared.
Yeah.
Never heard from them since. And so, but unfortunately, in July of 2008, I bought $1 million house, and it wasn't a big deal. I mean, we were making $100,000 a month. Our mortgage was only like $8,500 a month, so it was not that big of a deal until it was. And so that's what happened. So in 2008, it did the Great Recession. By 2009, I'm like, I've got to do something. My income is going down, 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 down. I've got to do something. So I had already made a decent amount of money in network marketing. So I said, I'm going to do network marketing again. So I joined this network marketing company, and in 4.5 months, got my income up to $40,000 a month from the network marketing side, another $100,000 a month from teaching the people in the company how to do what I did. So I'm like, okay, we're on our way back. And then the company changed the product, and then in a couple of months, that income went away. Then in 2010, I got a call from the IRS. I got audited. They told me I owed them $1,065,000. 4 months before that, my accountant met this woman, moved to Australia. Now I don't have an accountant, and the IRS is breathing down my neck.
You're on your own.
I'm on my own. So I had to hire a forensic accountant to come do 7 years of accounting. It was just a lot. And so that was 2010. 2011, my mom died. 2012, my car got me possessed. And I know people think, no, it's repossessed. Well, repossessed is when they come get it. Me possessed is when you take it back to them. I took it back to them. And our $1 million house that we bought for $1,027,000, I ended up selling it on a short sale for $634,000. So I lost $400,000 on that house. I borrowed money from anybody who would loan it to me, and we moved from Pennsylvania to Florida. My credit was so bad I couldn't buy a house, so I had to rent a house, and I had to pay the first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. And so we moved to Florida and like started over from scratch, basically. And so funny. I remember like I had a 2006. This was in 2013, January of 2013. So I remember a couple of times, 2013, 2014. I had a 2006 Mercedes CLS 500. So there were these like loan shark companies in Florida. So I went to this loan shark company in Florida, and they loaned me $5,000 on the title of my car, so I could pay my bills. And I lived on my friend loaned me money for 2 years. So I'm like doing everything I can to get back. So I paid that off, and then a couple of months later, I'd go have to borrow $5,000 on my title again. And then I can remember in 2014, I can remember feeling like nothing I'm doing is working. It's just like, so heavy. And I can remember sitting on my back porch, on the patio. It wasn't a porch, it was a back patio. Sitting in a chair. My wife comes outside and says, "What's wrong?" I just broke down and started crying. Nothing's working. I don't know. I'm crying like a baby. She's like, "Oh, it's okay. You'll figure it out. You always do." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Okay, I hear you," but I didn't feel like I'd ever figure anything out. And so, um, but in 2015, I found King Solomon's business model in the Bible. I was so excited. I was so jacked out of my mind. Called my brother. I said, "This is what I'm going to do." And in 2015, I also joined Russell Brunson's Inner Circle. And when I joined Russell's Inner Circle, the thing that changed my life in there the most was everybody in the room was richer than me. Everybody. Like, I don't know if you know these people, but you probably know who Alex Ramosi is.
Mhm.
He was there. He was like 27. He was making so much more money than me. Do you know Brendan Poulin and Caleb
Yeah.
Poulin? They were in there. James P. Friel, all these people, Dean Holland, all these people, they were making so much money. We were like, I went with my son and my daughter. I joined Russell's Inner Circle back then. He's like, it's $25,000 a year. Yeah, I'd like to join. I don't have $25,000, but I said, if you'll work a deal with me, if you'll let me pay you $5,000 every other month, I'll join. So they didn't even have a payment plan, but they worked out one for me so I could join it. So every other month I'd pay him $5,000. The first time I ever went to an Inner Circle meeting, they were having it at the Grove Hotel in Boise, Idaho. And the rooms were $235 a night. I don't have $235 a night to stay at a hotel.
Right.
We stayed at the Mara Suites Inn for $79 a night. I got a room for me and a room for my son and my daughter. They stayed in a room together, and we went to the mastermind. But the thing that changed my life was all these people were making more money than me. When they were asking for help, everybody acted like my answers were the best answers they'd ever heard in their life. Like, but oh, they ought to make more money than me. How can y'all think my answers are good? It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm so confused. And then one day I realized, oh, I've been selling to the wrong people. I've been selling to the needers instead of to the leaders. I'm just going to keep selling the same stuff I used to sell, but I'm going to sell it to people who want it and don't need it instead of people who need it and don't want it.
Yeah.
And everything changed.
That's so cool. That's cool how all those things, like, it was hard, but God still had it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And if I hadn't gone through that, hard, there's no universe in which I'd be here right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would have thought, I don't need that. I'm already there. Right. I'd still be making $100,000 a month thinking I was a baller.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes God, He takes you on this path.
Oh, yeah.
That's
the journey.
Yeah.
That's the journey. The valley to the mountain. To the valley to the mountain.
I think some people get so caught up, they're like on the mountain, they're like, I'm here, I'm going to be here forever.
No.
God will show you,
Right.
other things that you need to accomplish. Because, like, with my, like, podcast, my book, and all that stuff, so I was injured. I was injured. I tore a tendon in my ankle. Okay. It wasn't a big, bad
like
thing.
A sports injury?
Yeah. I'm a swimmer, and I was playing basketball, so it doesn't really, go together. And I was playing basketball, and I just tore a tendon in my ankle. And I was out for a month of swim.
Wow.
And so
Achilles? Or
no, it was just like a little tendon on the side. It wasn't bad.
But it was bad enough to mess up your...
It was bad enough that I couldn't swim for a month, and I was in a boot. Okay. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? I felt so, I was like, God, no. So yeah, it wasn't like a big tragic thing, but it was just, it changed my perspective. And I was like, that's not, I was going to go on this path. I was just going to keep swimming, because we swim, I train 4 hours a day. And I was like, that's my life, God. Why are you doing this to me?
You trained for swimming for 4 hours a day?
Yeah, because I would get up in the morning, I'd go, and then I'd work on school, and then I would go in the evening.
Wow.
And so I was like, this is not...
How old were you when you were that dedicated to swimming? That's crazy.
Last year.
Really?
Yeah.
14 years old, you're swimming 4 hours a day.
Yeah, and so it was some would swim and some would be running and training like that.
Right. But you
yeah.
trained for swimming 4 hours a day at 14. Wow. Okay.
And I was just like, okay, this is not okay, God. I was so mad at him because you changed my plan. And then I realized how dumb that sounded. So I was like, hold on, wait. I was sitting in my room, and I just remember this, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing. This is not what I had in mind. And I was like, wait, but you're the creator of everything. You created me, and so I can trust you to take care of me.
100.
And that was just
that's a great realization for a 14-year-old.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry. That was my bad. I tried to take the reins, and I should have just trusted you with them. Right. And I think that's the difference between having a relationship with God, is you're like, I don't like this, but I'm going to trust you. Right. And it's not like, well, okay, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to do over here, and you can do whatever you want to do. And so that was my big, okay, God, this is not what I wanted, but I know that you have something better on the other side.
Right.
And so I started a podcast, and I was like, I was interviewing my friends, and I was doing different things like that, and I started it, because this is like my year anniversary this week, because it was like I started it
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's like kind of cool. It's exciting, but I started it on June 6th last year because I knew I was coming here on like the 8th or whatever. And I was like, I have to show up with something. I was like, these ClickFunnels people, I have no idea. I'm going on vacation. Like, I was not really like thinking about it as this was going to change my life.
Wow.
And so I showed up, and everybody was like, "You have a podcast at 14?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have one episode out." Like, I was really proud of myself.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's accomplishment. I mean, some people don't have anything out, so that was an accomplishment.
I didn't have anything going when I was 14.
And so I was like, okay, this is what I have. And I did not know what I was going to do next. I was like, okay, God, take it however you want to take it. So I spent like a lot of summer last year just recording episodes and just talking to my friends about faith. And there was like it's changed a lot, because that was mostly like stories about their testimonies and their faith, and now it's changed to like business and that kind of thing. But we're going to go back into the backstory. So when we were in Mexico, my brother won the tickets to go to Vegas in person.
Oh, for FHL.
And I was like, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what my plan is. And I kind of felt like this calling. I was like, I should write a book. I don't really know how to write a book. I don't know anything about how to write a book or anything like that. And so I was like, okay, God, can you just show me? Like, do whatever you need. And so I kind of thought about that. I kind of procrastinated on it because I didn't know what I was doing. And then when we went to FHL in person in September, I was talking to Eileen. And I was like, so I want to write this 100-day devotional. What should I do? Like, how should I do this? Should I actually do it? And she was like, I want you to write it. I want you to do a 30-day devotional and write it and bring it to me at FHL 2025. And I was like, that's February. You want me to write a book and publish it? I'm 14. And I was like, all these like excuses. Like, I can't do it. And I was like, wait, but God wouldn't have given me that feeling, that calling, if he didn't know that I could accomplish it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, Eileen Wilder told me to do it. I'm going to do this.
That's fine.
And so I worked really hard, and I had it done in January because I sent it to Bowen before he went on his mission. And I was like, okay, I have this book. What am I going to do with this? And I released it at FHL. I gave it to Eileen. It was one of the coolest moments of my life. Like, I walked up to her and I was like, I did it.
Wow.
And so then I made it there. We went to another mastermind while I was in Idaho during like November, and so I got to interview Russell, and he had come up to me while we were at the FHL in person, and he had asked to be on my podcast, and there was just all these different things, and I was like, wow. God, I see you. I see that maybe swim wasn't the best path for me to continue on, and you took me through that trial, and you took me through that so that I could see a different path. And that like destroyed me. I was like, God, this was my plan. And so I ended up quitting swim in January because I was like, I'm done. I'm going to focus on my book, and I'm going to never go back to this ever again. I'm swimming again. And so I'm now training like an hour, 2 hours a day. That's not 4 hours, and that's not like I'm competing all the time. But I found that sometimes God takes you away, and he might bring you back. He might not. But there's just different paths that you have to go on so that you can have the final destination. And my biggest like thing that I think about a lot is when God, there was this thing I heard. I was like, what if God sat you down? Like, you passed away and God sat you down and he shows you this like movie. And he was like, this is what you could have become, but you didn't listen to me, and so you had this life. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to accomplish that. I'm going to do whatever you want me to do. It's like I speak sometimes, and I love it so much because I get up there and I'm like, there's somebody in here that needs what I have to say. That was what got me through the hard nights of writing that book. It was like, I was like, somebody needs what I have to say. So I'm going to talk to these people because somebody out there doesn't know God. Somebody out there is struggling. There's something that God has put in my heart that I'm going to help them.
100.
And so that's kind of just my backstory of all of that. Sorry, I kind of like ranted for a little bit.
That's cool.
But yeah, so cool. I think it is cool how sometimes God puts you through those hard moments so that you can see something else.
Yeah, it's the difficulties that we go through that make us strong enough to stay there when we get there, wherever there is.
Right. Yeah. And we don't have to know that. That's the cool part.
No.
We don't have to. No. It's better if we don't.
Sometimes it's just we find out as we stay on the journey.
Yeah. And so what, like, I'm going to ask another question now, but where did you, okay, wait, hold on, how do I rephrase this? So you were in that, like, moment of you lost everything. How did you keep going? Like, what was the one thing that you, okay, I have to accomplish this, and you didn't, like, let that take you down?
Well, I was down some. I told you I was crying on the back porch of my wife's shoulder. But there's a scripture that says, unto him that is joined to all living, there is hope, and a living dog is better than a dead lion. I'm still alive, so God's not done. Yeah. I'm still here, so clearly he's not done.
Yeah. That's awesome. Jeremiah 29:11 is my favorite Bible verse
It's a good one.
because I'm like, you know the plans you have for me, so why am I so worried about these plans?
Exactly.
I'm like, they're good,
Yeah.
so you got me.
Yeah. When I see him worried, then I'm going to get worried. Until then,
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah. And I'm gonna pull out my other questions. Okay, this one, it kind of just goes back into the company, and it's how did building your company change your faith? How did you grow in faith when you built your company?
well, one, by talking to other people of faith who build companies. So my friend David, the guy who loaned me money when I was broke, I said to him one time, I said, Dave, how many employees do you have? He said, I don't know, 60 or 70. I said, you have 60 or 70 employees. The thought of that just blew my mind because that's a lot of payroll.
Oh yeah.
And I said, doesn't that ever make you nervous? His wife's name is Charlotte. He said, nah, Char and I have been praying for years that the Lord would give us a successful business so we could hire good Christian people, pay them good money so they could feed their babies. I was so confused. I'm like, who thinks like that?
Yeah.
And it's one thing to have enough faith for daily bread for yourself. It's something else altogether to have enough faith for daily bread for other people's families.
Yeah.
To know if you don't make the cash register ring, these people's babies won't eat. Sheesh.
Right. It's a lot of ooh, I got
Right. So it requires believing at a much bigger level to have a team that's depending on you to be successful so that they can win.
Yeah. That's cool.
But God's God's not surprised by any of it.
Right.
So I'm not going to be taken off guard.
It's true. I want to dive into how you were talking about earlier when you break down the time that you spend, when you're with your family, you're at home, and because I did a podcast with Brent Peters, and we were talking about how to balance all those things, and he also said he's like, there's no balance. You can't have it all even.
Right.
There's gonna be some days that take more, some days that take less. There's just gonna be different parts,
Right.
And so I feel like people struggle with that, and I do have some listeners that are business people and family people, and they struggle with that because they're like, oh, I need to be on my I need to be working all this time, but they're spending time with their family less, and they
yeah, and sometimes that's necessary. I know it was necessary for me in the beginning. I worked what felt like to my family, I'm sure, all the time.
Yeah.
But I had no momentum in my business. And so I had to focus. I had to stay in the season of focus long enough to overcome inertia and create financial momentum. And once I started creating financial momentum, I could remove myself from the equation some. And the momentum would carry us. And then I would just have to come along every now and then and keep the momentum going. And so now I'm in a place in my business where we've got so much momentum. And we've got beautiful systems in place where it doesn't require my business requires less and less of me every year.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen in the beginning. I mean, it could, I guess. But in order for it to happen from the beginning, you'd have to be making a lot of sales, so you're going to afford to pay for a lot of automation and a lot of delegation.
Yeah.
So, but now I go to my studio basically 2 days a week. I go on Mondays from around 8:30 to noon, and I go on Thursdays from around 8:30 to noon. And unless I'm having my challenge, in those weeks I go in from 8:30 to noon every day, Monday through Friday. But the rest of the month it's just Mondays and Thursdays. And then if I have an event somewhere, which I don't do a lot of it, like events where I'm speaking, I do some, but not a lot. So it's my schedule is really, really chilled. I can go to my granddaughter's karate practice and can hang out with my wife or hang out with my daughter, my son-in-law, my granddaughter, or whatever.
I think it's cool because you put the work in. You knew
Yeah.
what the outcome was going to be because you knew what you were putting in.
Exactly. And I worked really, really hard for really, really long hours in the beginning because I knew there would come a point where through automation and delegation, I could back away some and the business wouldn't go down because I'm away. Right. My wife and I are going to take our 40th anniversary trip in August. And when we do, our business will probably grow while we're gone. We'll probably come back to making more money than we were making before we left.
Yeah.
So
that's cool because some people, they focus so much on right now You need to look at the bigger picture. Like right now might not be great. It might not be super fun, and it might not be like so enjoyable.
Right.
But the outcome, I felt that when I was writing my book.
Mhm.
It's like in the moment, I was like, God, maybe this isn't what you're calling me to do. Maybe I should just give up now. And I was like, wait, maybe I'm telling myself this isn't what God's calling me to do because
Right.
I don't want to do it. I was like, but it's not about me. And like now I see the reward because I get like text messages on like Instagram and someone's like, hey, you really helped me. I
How
was
cool
going
is
through
that?
really, it's amazing. Like it's so, I bet you get those like, oh, it's like,
Yeah, I do.
they just message you. Like someone told me one time, it was about my podcast, and they were like, I listened to every podcast episode you've recorded.
Wow.
She's like, my faith was so low and I was about to kill myself. She's like, I was going to kill myself. But I listened to your podcast and I realized that it wasn't all like bad and they're still good. And like
So
all this
good.
stuff. And I was like, that,
Good stuff, Rose. Good stuff.
like, that's amazing to be able to have that. And so I think, yeah, looking at the final results and not be so focused on the pain in the moment because it's not going to be the discipline in the moment. The Bible talks about it. It's not going to be great in the moment.
Right.
It's not going to feel good,
Right.
but it will in the future.
100.
I think that's a really cool like testimony to that.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
And I have like a fun like kind of goes into this, but when you, I guess it's like not really fun, but people like make fun of you. Like do people ever like message you? You kind of talked about this earlier. Like message you and they like, talk down about you and different kinds of things like that.
Not usually in messages, usually in comments on my videos or in comments on other people's videos.
Yeah.
But they don't usually message me that. I mean,
mean,
I did have like back in the Periscope days, I had somebody a couple of times. People said, "We're gonna come by your house and kill your whole family." Okay, good luck with that.
how do you not let that get to you? Because I feel like sometimes if someone comments on something, I'm like, oh, it kind of like hurts, but it's also like, how do you not let that get down?
Because I know more than it hurts, it's coming from somebody who is hurt. Like that's not a normal response to anything.
Yeah.
Right? Like a negative comment is not. My favorite comments are this guy comments. This guy acts like blah blah blah. So when somebody, that's called an ad hominem fallacy, by the way. I learned that from my son. But an ad hominem fallacy is when somebody disagrees with you, and the most emphatic part of their argument is when they call you a name.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This person's a racist. They're a sexist. They're this. They're that, and they call you a name because the argument that they have against your point of view is so weak that the only leverage they can find is to call you something other than who you are.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. Yeah, they can't identify who you are because they know that they can't break that.
Right. So they want to draw attention to something that makes them feel better about who they are, because they don't know who they are. They only know who they aren't, which is why they think they recognize who you aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's cool. Yeah, you have to like
figure
that out.
Unfortunately, hurt people, but I don't let hurt people hurt me. I just recognize they're hurting, and I think to myself, "Oh, it's a shame that you're going through that."
Right.
But if that's what you got to go through right now, hopefully you'll learn something from it.
Yeah, when I quit swim, someone was really down about it and like really mad about me quitting swim.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, but it's not about you.
Right.
It's not about you. It's about me. It's about how I need to do, like what I need to do for God.
Right.
And I remember after they had said a mean comment to me, I just started praying. And I was like, thank you for keeping my heart so pure and so kind that I don't treat people like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't go back on him being like, no. I was like, okay, that's your opinion. We all have our own opinion. That's
Thank
yours.
You for sharing.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll be praying for you. Like that's yours. And you're allowed to have your own opinion about me, and that's okay.
Right.
But I also have my opinion about me.
Right.
I see myself how God sees me.
That part.
And so yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well done.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna look at Okay, yesterday, this is really cool, but you were talking about the 6 steps to transformation. Is that what it was?
Yep.
And I was just going through that, and it was cool. And so I just want to say that. Like, that was just
Thank you.
My notes.
6 steps to transformation. Like the transformation is the ultimate optimization of business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say that. That was
Thank you.
Whole nother thing. But yeah, so how did you know this was what God was calling you to do? Like, did you ever have a moment or a time where you're like, this is actually what God was calling me to do?
I don't. I can remember having moments where I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But I don't ever have moments where I'm not sure anymore. Yeah. I just know that if I am yielded to God and I'm listening to His Spirit and meditating on His Word, if I'm doing those things, I am right where I'm supposed to be, doing right what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. There's some people get caught up in like other people, what they're telling them to do. Or just like listen to God.
Yeah, I am who I am, and I am who He called me to be, and who He created me to be. And like, my job is to please Him and to serve people. So I don't ever get it flipped, and I don't ever attempt to like please people.
Yeah.
People are almost impossible to please.
Oh yeah. For sure.
God's easy to please. Just stay yielded.
Yeah. Like bear His fruits and spirit and take care of His people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the cool part about God. Like when people are like, I don't believe in God, someone asked me one time and they're like, how do you know God is real? And I was like, I can show you all this proof and I can show you all that. And I was like, but I'm gonna just tell you that I know God is real because I know me when I'm with Him and I'm like in step with God, and I know me when I try to walk away from God.
Mm.
And those are two different people, because when I'm with God, I'm like, I know what I'm doing. Like I don't, or it's not like I know what I'm doing, but I know that you know what you're doing. And so I'm gonna trust you and I'm gonna follow you, and I'm just a better person because I'm not by myself.
Right.
And then when I'm away from God and I know, God, I got this, I can do this by myself, I'm a different person because I'm not sure.
Right.
Because I'm trusting in a human. Humans, you can't trust in like humans with all of those things. You have to give it to God. And that's a super big thing that I've learned in my journey is like, just give it to God and follow Him.
Yeah. He is trustworthy.
Oh, yeah.
He's so trustworthy that He refers to Himself as the God who cannot lie, not the God who does not lie,
Right.
not the God who will not lie, not even the God who has not lied, the God who cannot lie.
Right.
God's very existence is staked on Him keeping His word.
Right. And you were talking about that earlier about keeping your word. And so can you kind of like dive into that for like a little bit about just keeping your word, and how do you make sure you keep your word?
Well, you have to be aware of what that even means.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell somebody something that you have no intention of following through on. That's number one. And if you do tell somebody something that you're going to do something, regardless of whether it's easy or hard, whether it costs you more than you want to pay, it takes longer than you want to take, if you say you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah.
And don't give yourself an off the hook. Don't let yourself off the hook for any reason.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, that is one of the best. Confidence comes from competence. Like, I have confidence. If I know how to do something, then if I get on a bicycle, I'm not worried about falling off. Or like I ride a Segway. When I'm riding my Segway, I'm not worried, oh man, I'm going to be able to balance. No, I have confidence because I have competence. But the other place confidence comes from, it comes from character. And if I keep my word to myself, and I keep my word to other people, I don't have to be worried about whether or not I trust me. I think too many people lack confidence because they've lied to themselves so many times in the past they can't believe a word they say. So make sure you're a person of your word, because people don't see you through their eyes, they see you through your eyes. And so if you don't believe in yourself, your energy is telling people not to believe in you.
Yeah. That's true. I feel like people mess up confidence a lot.
Yes.
And they don't have confidence, you can see it.
Right.
It's like, oh, you don't. I think that also goes in with knowing yourself. Like, or you don't know you.
Right.
You don't know what you're doing here because you're just trying to do all these other things, not
100.
focusing.
Yep.
That's true. I don't really have any other questions. Do you have any like questions or comments or anything like that?
Because since you're an entrepreneur, you're an author, you're moving into speaking. Have you thought about creating a course?
Yeah, I've thought about a couple of different kinds of courses I could create.
Okay.
Because I really want to do how to start a podcast.
How to what?
How to start a podcast. Because I've had people ask me that. And I was like, okay, well, somebody, like, if I've had over 5 people ask me that, then I should make it.
I think if you create specifically a course on how a young person can create a podcast, I think it'll be even way more valuable. And then if you charge enough money for it, other kids' parents will buy it for them.
Yeah. I think when you like target your audience, that's when you...
Yeah, so I think that's a great idea. I think if you create a course and sell a course on how any kid can start a podcast that's profitable, blah, 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 profitable, or how they can start a podcast that's powerful and prolific and profitable. I think if you sold it for anywhere from $4.97 to $9.97, and then tell the kids to ask their parents to watch the webinar with them, and then sell it, I think you'll do really, really well.
Thank you. Yeah, because I love my podcast. Like right now I'm getting sponsors for my podcast. I've been
Let's
getting
go.
sponsors because I want to travel and do podcast episodes.
Cool.
And because I think it's cool to just meet people and talk to people
100.
and like listen to their stories and get different stories. Because like I know so much more about you than I could have like learned from a video.
Right.
And I think that's special to me, and I want to have like in-person podcasts. And so that's what I'm working on right now is getting sponsors for my podcast and then starting a course that I can help other people.
So I've got one last question for
Yeah.
you. We've been here at this Mastermind in Paradise this week. What's your biggest takeaway from the week? Like, what's the thing that you feel like, oh, that's the thing I came for?
Honestly, it was like the first night when I sat down with you and you were like, just post your podcast on YouTube. Because
wow.
And it sounds like a little thing, but it actually
No, that's not a little thing.
It changed like my mindset on that. It's like if I just do that, it could change things.
Progression is better than perfection.
Right.
Just get it done.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Rose.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got a chance to connect.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for listening, and that's all we have for today. We'll do an episode like in a few years, and we'll be like,
come on.
Really cool.
This is what we did the first time. This is
right.
where we are now.
Part 1, Part 2.
Part 1, Part 2.
Thank you guys for watching, and bye.